Hello and welcome to my very first video, and the very first episode of a little series I'm going to be running called Comments World. In this series I'm going to take a completely blank world and fill it full of creations built from comments you guys suggest down below. Comments can be anything you want, from something as normal as build an aeroplane to something a bit more silly like build a Pikachu riding a unicycle. You might also want to say how the comment you're suggesting would interact with something already in the world. So if an aeroplane had already made it, you could say, oh, and it's being chased by a pterodactyl. Something, silly like that, so that things will interact with each other as we develop the world. Now, as I've already mentioned, this is my first video, so I have no subscribers and therefore no comments or no comment section for someone to leave a comment anyway. But fortunately, I do have a couple of friends, so I've asked one of them to give me a suggestion as to what to build for the very first episode. So first of all, let's get a brand new world, clear this out and get somewhere to start fresh. Oops. There we go, that's looking pretty empty to me. So let's take a look at the first suggestion. And it's going to be a fire station, which isn't exactly what I had in mind, to be honest. Because to build everything to scale and make the fire truck look in proportion to the building behind it, it's going to have to be a big time-consuming build, so I'm not going to have time to put lots of different things in this time. But it has been requested, so I will give it a go. So I'm starting off with the fire truck, and I'm doing that because it's going to be one of the smaller elements of the build, and therefore when we get to the larger parts, the actual building behind it and the fire station bays, you should be able to look at it and say, yep, that fits in there, and that is proportional, which is really key to making sure your builds look good. I could continue with tips like that, but this isn't a tutorial video, this is a building your comments video. So I'm going to talk about what I'm doing at the minute on the screen. The fire engine is almost done. You can see here I'm just adding the finishing touches, which in this case is the ladder on top. I'm using cobblestone actually, it's a nice dark textured block, and it just adds a bit of difference to the fire engine to make each bit stand out a little bit more. And I don't know about you, but I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to fill in the inside, just so that anyone who looks through the glass will get a nice consistent feel. I've dug out the bottom to see where the bay's going to be, and now it's the mathy bit, just working out the proportions and filling it in. So I've used stone, yellow lines, and just multiplied that across where my 4 bays are going to be. I've got the frame behind it, dug it out, filled it in with concrete, and then filling in the quartz frame with red brick, and I think it's quite a nice difference. The roof's just going to be plain quartz, and it's just a base at the minute. I can fill it in later. Quartz stairs in the corners give it a bit of nicer frame, and I've just put down red concrete behind it to give it that fire station look. Hollowing out the one where the fire station is, because I want to give it the effect that the fire station's pulling in or coming out. And the other doors I've just put glass in, quite simple, just to make it look more like a fire engine door. I'm now moving on to the other part of the fire engine, which will be the bit you would expect to find people in. So you can see me here just counting out where it's going to be and building the frame again, filling in with that fire station red, and beginning the outline as to where the central tower will be. Some of you might think it's a lot of quartz, but I just like it. I think it gives a nice white, clean frame to it. I've decorated the front, put some windows in and a door, and a nice emblem on the side, which is just different shades of blue with a diamond square in the middle. Not because it's diamond, its value doesn't really make much of a difference, but because it's a nice contrasting colour. We've just trimmed away some of the wall from the central tower, so it stands out more, and putting on the emblem we put on the side, on the top, so that local residents can see it from a distance, and I appreciate there's no residents, but hopefully in the future we'll have a few. Now I'm looking at that big red space above the door, so I'm going to fill in a little shelter for anyone who's, standing at the doorway. But above that, I wasn't quite sure what to fill in that space. I ended up going with just an orange and yellow emblem like that and attaching it to the ceiling. I then just did some general decor work, so putting some flowers under the window, hatches to make it look like baskets, and filling it in. I thought blue would be a nice contrast. To give it a bit more shape, I just went along the upper edge with those staircases again. I was somewhat happy with it at this point, but thought there was something missing, so I added on another contrasting colour, grey concrete, with some lighter grey behind it, and this was going to be a sort of, upstairs office area that people who worked could go and do their work in, essentially. Some well-placed windows just added to the effect and made it look like it was part of the building. You can see through it, however, and there wasn't any depth, so I went ahead and added that in with some dark grey concrete behind the glass to make it look like the lights are turned off inside. This was achieved by taking out some of the tower behind it, but we're going for how it looks, the visual appearance. It's not actually going to be used as a fire station, as I'm sure you're aware. Putting some windows around the sides on the tower just made it look a little bit more realistic, I felt. Again with that dark concrete behind the glass. So far from the front, I thought it was looking pretty good. Everything was in proportion, and you could definitely tell what it was meant to be. Moving to the left-hand side of the building, I just added on the emblem, the same as the other side, just to make it a bit more symmetrical. Looking through the outside window though, I noticed you could see it, so I went inside and covered up with brick, so that you couldn't, basically. Remember, we're looking for just an outside, aesthetic, good-looking fire station. It doesn't have to actually, cater to a function. I thought the beacon there was a nice touch, and then added a concrete pavement just to add it some shape and give it a boundary. Flowers are always a nice decoration, so I stuck them in as well. Moving to the back, I just put a door in and some glass windows all the way along, and I thought that was sufficient, and trimmed it with stairs as per usual. Going back to the front, oh no, I've forgotten the battalion car, so I went on and built that next. This was pretty much done in the same way as the fire engine, but because it was smaller, I just used some wooden blocks to make the doors, and that was really the only major difference apart from the ladder on top. Now, I was going to leave this to the end, but thought I might forget, so went ahead and did it now. Chariot 94's rescue service. Chariot 94 is of course the person who requested this build, so I wanted to make sure there was an adequate sign both on the front of the building and out front by the path. And I'm happy to do this for anyone who does in the comments suggest the next build I do that goes ahead. So next up, I'm going to fly round to the back of the house and really fill in the bits there, which should be the last details, or the last elements to add anyway. Now here I actually had to have a little think about what block to use, because I wanted a sort of metal grate effect that, in a garage they go up and down. And for that, weirdly enough, I went for the furnace, because on the back of the furnace it's got that two-tone darker lighter shade. To fill it in, you have to put a block which isn't a furnace down, and then put the furnaces next to it, but the finishing result I thought was pretty good. I could definitely imagine them being wheeled up and down to get vehicles in and out of the building. I finished the frame off with a bit of fencing, and then filled in the ground with some stone brick again, and started on that tower out back. It is a fire training tower, so it doesn't have to be fancy at all, just some red brick, some glass windows are popped in and a door, and that was it, good to go. That leaves just one thing left that was requested for this build, which was the car out back with its roof off, which looks like the firemen have been practicing on it. I decided this car used to be yellow, so started getting out the yellow bricks, and this quickly turned out to be like a pretty good choice, because there were also sponge options, and what sponge would do is add a different texture to the yellow, so you can see where it would have been progressively burnt. But that's not all, because you do also have the wet sponge option, which comes with the animation of bits of water running out of it, so it looks like it has been hosed down and now it's running off, which is what I went on to do next. Just put some packed ice in the ground underneath it to make it look as though, it had been hosed with water, the car was still wet and dripping, and there had subsequently been a puddle forming underneath the car. There is something else missing, however, from a car which was on fire, and that's smoke. And to do this, which is probably one of my favourite effects that I use in build battles all the time, is just adding dark stained coloured glass blocks essentially in the same direction and breaking a few of them so it looks like smoke being carried away. Now that would be the finishing touch to the build. I was quite happy with the effect, but let's have a look at the whole thing. And I think we hit the specification pretty well, with the only thing missing being the hoses, but they're just too small to add with any degree of detail in a world made of blocks. Now, I am happy with this as a centerpiece, but it is much bigger and more detailed and more time consuming than I had in mind for any builds going forward. So if you do want to leave a comment in the box down below, which you'd like me to build, I do ask for it to be a little bit smaller, because I do want to get a few in each episode and get as many people as want to contribute something to Comments World. But that's all for now. Thanks again to Chariot 94 for sending in the very first request, and I look forward to having something to build next. If you could like and subscribe, all the usual things you hear on YouTube videos, that would be great. Thanks very much, hope you liked it, and see you next time.